From the Temple of Solomon the King, the chapter is called The King. After the warrior, it describes the position of the enlightened master. It is, in my personal opinion, the most important of the chapters describing the various steps and points of view. Heed to it well, listen to it repeatedly. The King. The King is the undying one. He is the life and the master of life. He is the great living image of the Son and the begetter of the Son. He is the divine child, the God-begotten one, and the begetter of God. He is the potent bull, the jeweled snake, the fierce lion. He is the monarch of the lofty mountains and the lords of the woods and forests, and the indweller of the globes of flame. As a royal eagle he soars through the heaven, and as a great dragon he churns up the waters of the deep. He holds the past between his hands as a casket of precious stones. The future lies before him clear as a mirror of burnished silver, and today is as an unsheathed dagger of gold at his girdle. Like a slave who is bold becomes a warrior, so a warrior who is fearless becomes a king, changing his battered helm of stench for a glittering crown of light. And as the warrior walks upright with the fearless disdain in his eyes, so does the king walk with bowed head, finding love and beauty wherever he goes. And whatever he does is true and lovely, for having conquered his self, he ruleth over his self by love alone, and not by the love of good and evil, neither proudly nor disdainfully, neither by justice nor by mercy. Good and evil is not his, for he has become a higher intelligence, as an art enshrined in the mind. And in his kingdom actions no longer defile, and whatever his heart inclineth him to do, that he does purely and with joy. And as the countenance of a singer may be ruddy or white, fair or dark, nevertheless the redness or the whiteness, the fairness or darkness affect not the song of his lips, or the rapture of his music. Similarly, neither does man-made virtue and vice, goodness and wickedness, strength and weakness, or any of the seeming opposites of light affect or control the actions of the king. For he is freeborn from the delusions and the dream of opposites, and sees things as they are, and not as the five senses reflect them on the mirror of the mind. Now he who would become as a king unto himself must not renounce the kingdoms of this world, but must conquer the lands and the states of others and usurp their thrones. Should he be poor, he must aim at riches without forfeiting his poverty. Should he be rich, he must aim at possessing poverty as well, without taking one farthing from the coffers of his treasury. The man of much estate must aim at possessing all the lands until there is no kingdom left for him to conquer. The unobtainable must be obtained, and it is the obtaining of it is found the golden key of the kingdom of light. The virgin must become as a wanton, yet though filled with all the itchings of lust, she must in no way forfeit the purity of her virginity. For the foundations of the temple are indeed set between day and night, and the scaffolding thereof is as an ark flung between heaven and hell. For is she who is a virgin, become but as a common strumpet, then she indeed falls and rises not, becoming in her fall but a cloud in the eyes of all men, and a foul wreck wherewith to sop up the lusts of flesh. So verily, if she, who being a courtesan, becometh an untouched virgin, she shall be considered as a thing of naught, being both sterile and loveless. For what profit shall she be to this world, who is the mother of unfruitlessness? But she who is both crimson and white, a twisted pillar of snow and fire, soothing where she burneth, and comforting where she chilleth, she shall be held as a queen among women. For in her all things are found, are an inexhaustible well of water around whose mouth grows the wild apricot, in which the bees set their sweet hives. She shall be both food and drink to the hearts of men, a well of life unto this world. Yea, a goodly tavern wherein cool wine is sold, and good cheer is to be had, and where all shall be filled with the joyance of love. Thus shall men attain the unity of the crown, and become as kings unto themselves. But the way is long and hilly, and beset with many pitfalls, and it traverses a foul and wild country. Indeed, we see before us the towers and the turrets, the domes and the spires, the roofs and the gables, glittering beyond the purple of the horizon, like the helmets and spears of an army of warriors in the distance. But on approaching, we find that the blue of the skyline encompasses a dark wood, wherein all things unmindful of the crown, and where there is darkness and corruption, and where lives the tyrant of the world clothed in a robe of fantastic desires. Yet it is there that the golden key has been lost, where the hog, the wolf, the ape, and the bearded goat hold revel. Here are set the pavilions of dreams and the tented encampments of sleep, in which are spread the tables of demons, where feast the wantons and the prudes, the youth and the old man, and all opposites of virtue and vice. But he who would wear the crown must find the key, else the door of the palace remains closed, for none other can open it for him. And he who would find the key of gold must seek it here, in the outer court of the world, where the flatterers and the parasites and the hypocrites buzz like flies over the flesh pots of life. Now he who enters the outer court sees set before him many tables and couches, at which are swollen veins revel the sons of gluttony of life. Here men, in their furious love of greed, juff their jaws with the luxuries of decay, which a little after go to the dunghill, and vomit their sour drink on one another as a certain sign of their good fellowship. Here they carouse together drunkenly as in a brothel, filling the world with the noise of cymbal and drum, and the loud-sounding instruments of delusion, with shouts of audacious shame. Here are their ears and eyes pleasantly titillated by the sound of the hissing of frying pans, on the sight of bubbling of stews, and courting voracity with necks stretched out, so that they may sniff up the wandering stream of the dishes. They fill their swollen bellies with things perishable, and drink up the gluttonies of life. Yet he who would partake on the banquet of light must pass this way, and sojourn a while amongst these animals who are so filled with swinish itchings and unbridled fornications that they perceive not that their manger and their dunghill lie side by side as twins in one bed. For a space he must listen to the hiccuping of those who are loaded with wine, and the snorting of those who are stuffed with food, and must watch these lecherous beasts who insult the name of man rolling in the offal, gambolling and itching with a filthy prurience after the mischievous delights of lewdness, drunkenly groping amongst the herd of long-haired boys and short-skirted girls, from whom they suck away their beauty as milk from the udders of a goat. He must dwell for a time with the she-ape smeared with white paint, mangled, daubed, and plastered with the excrement of crocodiles and the froth of putrid humours, who are known as women. Disreputable hags who keep up old wives whispering over their cups, and who, as filthy in body as in mind, with unbridled tongues clatter wantonly as they giggle over their sluttish whisperings, shamelessly making with their lips sounds of lewdness and fornication. And wanton young drabs, with mincing gait, swing their bodies here and there amongst the men, their faces smeared with the ensnaring devices of wily cunning. Winking boldly and babbling nonsense, they cackle loudly, and like foals scorching the dunghill, seek the dirt of wealth, and having found it, pass their way to the gutter, and the grave loaded with gold like a filthy purse. O seeker, all these thou bear witness to and become partaker in, without becoming defiled or disgusted, and without contempt or reverence. Then for a certain shalt you find the golden key, which turneth the bolt of evil from the staple of good, and which opens the door which leads to the palace of the king, wherein is the temple. For when you have discovered beauty and wisdom and truth in the swollen weans and the distending bellies and the bubbling lips and the lute gambollings and the furious greed, the wanting whisperings, the sly winkings, and all the shameless nonsense of the outer court, then indeed shalt thou find that key of gold, which is only found in the marriage of wantonness and chastity. And taking it, thou shalt place it in the lock of the cherubic fire which is fashioned in the centre of the door of the king's house, which is built of ivory and ebony, and studded with jet and silver. And the door shall open for a time as if a flame has been blown aside, and thou shalt see before thee a table of pearl, of bank which are set the hidden waters, and the secret bread of the banquet of light. And thou shalt drink and eat and become bright as a stream of molten silver, and as the light of the body is the eye, so shall thy true self become as an eye unto thee, and see all things, even the cup of the third birth, and taking it thou shalt drink from the cup of the Eucharist of freedom, the wine of which is more fragrant than the sweet-scented grapes of Thrace, and the musk-breathing wines of Lesbos, and is sweeter than the vintage of Crete and the vineyards of Naxos and Egypt. And thou shalt be anointed with the sweet-smelling nards and unguent made from lilies and cypress, myrtle and amaranth, and of myrrh and cassia well mixed. And in thine hair shall be woven rose leaves of crimson light, and the mingling love lilies and violets twined as the dawn with night. And about thee shall waft a sweeter fragrance than the burning of frankincense and storax and lingeloes, for it is the breath of the temple of God. then shalt thou step into the king's palace, O warrior. And a voice more musical than the flute of ivory and the psaltery of gold, clear as the bell of mingled metals, in the night shall call unto thee, and thou shalt follow it to the throne, which is a perfect cube of flaming gold in a sea set of whiteness. And then shalt thou be unrobed of sleep and crowned with the silence of the king, the silence of song, of thought and of reason, and the unthinkable silence of the throne.